Dear representatives of the press, this is a quick press point with the NATO Secretary General, who would like to ask the first question. Please state your name and media. Yrsa.
I'm a columnist at Hufvudstadsbladet. How do you see the... Sorry. Yrsa Gryne, Hufvudstadsbladet columnist. How do you see the need for an update of the strategic concept of NATO from 2010 in the light of what has happened since then, and in the light of this new enhanced cooperation with the EU?
NATO is constantly adapting and developing our strategy as the world changes. And we have been able to implement significant changes in the way we respond to a more challenging and more demanding security environment without changing the strategic concept. Because the strategic concept provides flexibility and provides also the main guideline for how NATO should adapt and respond to changing security challenges. Let me just give you briefly some examples. Since we adapted the strategic concept back in 2010, the world has really changed. We have seen all the turmoil, the violence to the south of the alliance with ISIL, Daesh, Iraq, Syria, but also North Africa. And we have seen a more assertive Russia in the east, illegally annexing Crimea and destabilizing eastern Ukraine. NATO has responded with the high readiness of forces, with the 4 battle groups into the eastern part of the alliance, the Baltic countries and Poland. And we have significantly stepped up our contributions to the fight against terrorism, being full member of the global coalition fighting ISIL, and also now stepping up our efforts in Afghanistan. I say this because it's too early to say whether there will be any strong call among allies for a change of the strategic concept. But regardless of whether we change that document or not, NATO has shown an impressive ability to adapt and to change to a changing world.
Over there. Yes, please.
Hi, Terry Schultz with NPR and Deutsche Welle. Given everything we know about the threat and the fact that, as Federica Mogherini said, a threat against one is a threat against all, are you disappointed that only 11 countries have joined Finland in the effort so far? Why aren't all the NATO members contributing to the center? Why aren't all the EU members contributing to the center? Thanks.
But this is the way these centers are established, is that some allies go together and take an initiative. Other allies are part of other centers, for instance, the Center on Cyber, or the Center on Energy Security or Strategic Communications. There are many other centers. So I think that that's just in a way reflecting the fact that we have some structures, some elements in the NATO cooperation where all allies participate. And then we have some other initiatives, especially those who are not purely NATO, but for instance this one, which is an initiative taken by some EU and NATO members to establish this center. And I welcome the fact that 11 countries participate, including the United States. And then maybe other may join afterwards, and perhaps also some other countries partner countries will also decide to work with the center. So this is a great initiative, it's a great center, and then this is the start, this is the beginning, and then I'm sure it will develop and strengthen in the future.
Gentlemen in the first row. Yes, please.
Nicolas Gros-Verel, French journalist, B2. 2 questions, if I may. The hybrid threat, do you think it is the main origin, it is or the main threat come from Russia, or it could come from other part of the world? And if I may, on Kurdistan, there is a problem with the declaration of independence in Kurdistan. Could you think that a member of NATO could continue the cooperation with the troop of Kurdistan of Peshmerga?
First of all, hybrid threats and the phrase hybrid threats covers so many different kinds of threats. And therefore I think it's no meaning to try to rank the different threats. We see that many allies report that Russia has been behind cyber attacks, trying to undermine some of the election processes, democratic processes, and so on. That has been something that NATO allies and NATO takes very seriously, and many allies have pointed at Russia being behind. And of course, we also saw Russia being behind hybrid aggression in Crimea, where in the beginning at least they denied that they were present, but then after some time they accepted or they said that they were present in Crimea. At the same time, we have seen that non-state actors, terrorist organizations have also used cyber and hybrid means to try to spread hatred, to try to spread propaganda, and also to try to recruit members or people into their ranks. So I think it is no way you can compare, because they are so very different. But NATO and NATO allies, together with EU members and the EU, we have to be able to respond to all these different kinds of hybrid threats. When it comes to the training of the Peshmerga forces, several NATO allies have trained and are training the Peshmerga forces. That's not a decision taken by NATO, but that's a decision taken by the different NATO allies as individual states, and it is a part of the efforts of the global coalition to fight ISIL. So it's not for NATO to decide on whether that training will continue or not.
Last question, the gentleman there, please.
Mr. Stoltenberg, Associated Press. In your initial remarks, you mentioned the needs regarding hybrid threats to build this situational awareness, if I got it right. Mm. So, and you also mentioned that NATO's plans to phase in these drones, NATO drones. So, could you please explain a little bit what is NATO planning to? What kind of benefits these drones will bring to NATO, and where is the alliance planning to which kind of areas the alliance is planning to place them? Thank you.
So one of the main purposes with the hybrid warfare is to disguise what we are doing, is to create deniability. To try to say that I'm not behind an attack, and at the same time being able to undermine or attack another country. That was what we saw in Crimea, and that is exactly what we have seen other places, to have covert operations or to use it as disguise for aggressive actions. And therefore, everything that can improve the way we understand, the way we analyze, improve our situational awareness, so we can see what is going on early enough, it is extremely important, so we are able to react quickly enough. And we have done that in many different ways, by improving our intelligence, by establishing this new intelligence division, but also by improving the means and the methods we have for reconnaissance and surveillance. And as I said, also just by having more forces in the eastern part of the alliance, we're also improving our readiness to react if something happens. The main purpose of this is, of course, to be able to deter any aggressor, any potential aggressor, for trying, because as long as NATO sends us a very clear message that we will react, and it's one for all and all for one, that's the best way not to provoke a conflict but to prevent a conflict. The drones, it's part of what we call the Alliance Ground Surveillance. It's a program that we have been working on for some time. And these are, big drones which are able to collect information, and then we will process it and analyze it. They can be used many places. So it hasn't been decided exactly when they're going to be used, but they will be used when and where needed to have a better understanding on what's going on the ground. If there is a tense situation, if there are challenges either in NATO territory, or for instance they may be used in NATO missions and operations. They will of course always be used in accordance with international law, but they will provide NATO with a much better tool to gather information on activities which are taking place on the ground. They will be deployed to Sicily at the Sigonella base, and then they will give us a new asset to analyze and to collect information.
Thank you very much to the representatives of the media, and thank you to you, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you so much.